Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll give you a comprehensive roundup of all the key business stories that are making the headlines right across Africa. From Cairo, Lagos, Nairobi and Johannesburg, we've got you covered. Here's what's coming up. The annual World Economic Forum for New Champions kicks off in the Chinese city of Tianjin. We'll have the details. The delayed containment of Ebola is going to hurt West African economies. And we'll look at a television station that's causing ripples in Nigeria's online media market. Tonight, let's start with news from one of Sub-Saharan Africa's biggest trade partners. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting of the New Champions has officially started in the northern Chinese city of Tianjin. CCTV's Yang Qingxi brings you the latest from there.
More than 1,500 leaders of business, governments and research institutions from more than 90 countries have gathered here for the World Economic Forum under the theme Creating Value Through Innovation. Premier Li referred to China's reforms and opening up as a grand innovation during his keynote speech at the opening ceremony.
We should make good use of the golden key of innovation and promote innovations in institutions, technology and science. By doing so, we will be able to maintain a medium to high growth rate and upgrade the Chinese economy as well.
There have been concerns about the Chinese economy because of indicators that have suggested declines in exports and real estate. However, the Premier says the Chinese economy will not be overly influenced by such sporadic volatility.
We will maintain our macro control over the Chinese economy as long as the growth rate is around 7.5%. Some fluctuations are normal. We will actively prevent larger fluctuations from happening, and China will not run into a hard landing.
Premier Li also stressed on the importance of reforms both inside the government and in the private sector. He said during his speech that the government should define a scope of what it should do in order to prevent power abuses. He also said that the country should define a negative list for companies so that companies are free to enter sectors that aren't on the list. Yang Chengxi, CCTV, Tianjin Meijiang Convention Center.
Now, this year's World Economic Forum has pretty much the same theme as last year's, creating value through innovation. Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, says innovation is a key factor for economic competitiveness amid a slow and uneven global recovery.
In the future, innovation will be the key in order to boost competitiveness. China has made substantial progress in this respect. I have to say here at this meeting, we are dealing with all aspects of innovation. We have all technology from internet to robots to nanotechnology to biosciences, but also what is very important in this respect, fosters an innovative spirit in the society. First, we have to say that the world is still coming out of a recession, and we have overall in the world low growth rates. So China, with a growth rate over 7%, is still performing extremely well. And the fact that we have here over 2,000 participants with over 1,000 people coming from abroad shows the trust which people have in the future of the Chinese economy.
Back in Africa, oil and gas exploration and production in West Africa is under increasing risk as the Ebola outbreak claims more and more lives. Over 2,200 people are dead so far, and John Caesar, an analyst with the research and consulting firm Global Data, says the region's economy risks losing millions of dollars a day. He says oil operators in the region may withdraw personnel until the epidemic is over in Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia and Nigeria. And if that happens, he says, it is likely operations will be crippled as the companies in these regions are fairly reliant on expatriate labor. CISA notes that Nigeria is the only country in the region with sufficient resources to contain the outbreak, but there's still a risk of uncontrolled spread of Ebola. As the 8th largest crude oil producer in the world, there's a substantial threat of supply disruption if the virus does spread further in the country. Let's get to more details on this now. CCTV's Deji Badmus takes up the story. He says Nigeria remains confident of minimal economic disruption.
Since the Ebola outbreak here in Nigeria, we have not seen any major disruption at all in the country's oil industry. Some weeks ago, when the first case of the virus was reported in the oil-rich city of Port Harcourt in southern Nigeria, there had been real fears that could prompt some of the international oil companies to evacuate their expatriate staff and that production could be adversely affected. But so far, that has not happened. Some experts have said part of the reason is the effective way which health authorities have been able to contain the spread of the virus to a large extent, and the fact that the situation here is not really as bad as you have it in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Now, having said that, shipping firm Bourbon SA, which supplies ships and crew to oil companies, says the Ebola outbreak has affected its operations. The company's chief executive recently said all its vessels from Nigeria have had their movement restricted in places like Cameroon and Ivory Coast. Ironically, the company's operation in Nigeria is centered around Port Harcourt. Other than that statement, I should say, from the shipping firm, there's been no disruption at all in the oil industry here. Of course, all of that could change dramatically if the Ebola situation in Nigeria spirals out of control. And of course, the economic consequence of that for the region could be very catastrophic. Deji Badmore, CCTV, Lagos, Nigeria.
Let's get a different perspective here for you from London, where Miriam Bemard is standing by. She's been keeping tabs on this story as it evolves. Miriam, Shell, Total, Eni, ExxonMobil, all these international oil firms are active in Nigeria's oil sector. Have the operations been affected in any way by the 3 reported Ebola cases in Port Harcourt?
Well, so far, Rama, the oil giants have been pretty muted about the level of impact on their operations. Shell was actually one of the first to say it's working with authorities to contain the cases, although they wouldn't comment any further when we tried to contact them. Analysts are saying that while there aren't any restrictions on oil vessels, there's ongoing monitoring of the workers themselves. Oil analysts are warning that operations for those 3 specific cases could see a decline of about 12% if the outbreak is contained. If it gets worse, though, Rama, it could further reduce the 2 million barrels of oil pumped per day from the region. We're talking about one of the largest hubs of for international oil companies.
Indeed. With regard to the wider region, however, what impact is the outbreak having on development and investment in West Africa's oil and gas sector? Are the countries affected being evaluated for their risks separately or as a whole?
Well, for the most part, companies are frustrated with a lack of government coordination across the board, prompting investors and analysts to judge the situation as one big problem in the region. Experts are warning that if this continues and the outbreak remains a problem, even in the short term, it can have a long-term impact on future projects, especially as corporations look to the companies working in the region and struggling to alleviate the financial fallout. Now, some of the reporters that have been covering this are also saying the outbreak has been mostly dictated, or the response to the outbreak, that is, has been dictated by companies like iron ore miner London Mining in Sierra Leone, which reacted quickly to actually evacuate the personnel and have the screenings in place. Others have taken drastic measures. Tula Oil is already looking to abandon its licenses and pull out of Liberia and Sierra Leone. And others like AngloGold are just reporting that there hasn't been any impact just yet.
Indeed. So far, as you mentioned, only exploration in the waters of Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, onshore and offshore, of course, has been affected by this outbreak. But what long-term effect is this epidemic likely to have on exploration in West Africa?
Well, the overall consensus among most experts that I spoke with on this end is that investors are still confident that offshore projects are still very safe. It's a safe bet. The problem is how to implement preventative measures moving forward, given that although most of the drilling in places like Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia is offshore, the less harbor intense aspect of the business are also very much less exposed. But almost all oil workers are based on in onshore stations, exposing them to the virus. Moving forward, investors will need to see governments adopting standardized health and safety policies expanded to various companies, working in the region, of course, to train staff on the signs and symptoms of the virus and, avoid having reactive and restrictive measures that could disrupt productivity.
Indeed. Finally, Miriam, let's talk about developments in the wider oil market around the world. We've seen quite a few traders fixing tankers to take North Sea, West African, Arab crudes and so on for storage in South Africa. What exactly is driving this? Are there concerns perhaps of a supply shortages in future?
Well, oil traders are saying that it's not so much a matter of supply shortage, but rather a rise in oil contracts for future delivery, mostly off the back of actually unrest in Iraq that we've been seeing, and of course sanctions against Russia. Storing crude is a traditional strategy we haven't seen for a while, but we did have Rama, better known as Contango, allowing traders to actually lock in profit by buying oil now and selling it forward for later delivery. Analysts that I spoke with said that since July, shipping fixtures show that oil giants like BP and Chevron are moving oil into storage sites in South Africa. South Africa's 45 million barrel Saldanha Bay storage is one of the top destinations for many traders. That lets them flip barrels east or west of the world based on where demand comes from.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for the update. That's Miriam Bemmard, live in London. Speaking of South Africa, the country's economy does continue to struggle to get its proverbial groove back. The aftershocks of the 5-month-long platinum sector strike still continues to be felt. Data in the monthly BankServe Africa Economic Transaction Index, real-time transactions declined by 3.2% compared to a year ago and 1.2% compared to July 2014. Now, experts say this trend is cause for concern given that in 7 of the last 12 months we've seen monthly declines in real-time transactions, and that, they say, is a red flag that should not be ignored.
At this moment in time, it certainly looks like growth is going to remain weak in South Africa. BankServe Africa's Economic Transaction Index is indicating that for 2 months in a row now, for the first time in history, we've seen a reduction in debit orders. And that shows you that people are scared of taking on debt, that they want to rather finish their payments and go and be a lot more safer and securer. Home sales are not doing as well. Car sales are not doing as well. The PMI is still negative. Yes, business confidence has come up a bit, but I don't think that's found traction in the current economy yet.
Still in South Africa, Comair, the country's only listed domestic airline operator, has the rather enviable record of showing profit growth pretty much every year for the last 68. This year was no exception. The group, of course, owns the Kulula.com brand. It operates the British Airways South African franchise as well. Like its bigger state-owned flag carrier competitor, Comair revenues were up 17% to about $628 million in a market where other operators are just shy of going under. Eric Venter, the company's chief executive, says being profitable in South African aviation isn't rocket science.
Well, the secret is lots and lots of little things. I don't think there's any single factor in there. I think that the real issue is we've got to concentrate on everything. The margins are very tight. There's so many operational efficiency opportunities. There are tiny tweaks to revenue generating opportunities. We typically look at, when we look at the efficiency of things like revenue management, inventory management, we're talking about fractions of a percentage improvements all the time. We've got a very strong focus on the growth prospects in Africa and where that growth is occurring the quickest. But at the same time, we're quite conservative in saying, well, we can't put massive capital into these markets yet because they're just not big enough to absorb the scale of aircraft that we operate with.
30 minutes in, let's make a quick run through the markets. 2 key stories you want to know about with respect to Kenya and South Africa. In South Africa, AngloGold Ashanti, of course, announced plans to split its South African assets from the rest of its assets around the world and list those over in London. Investors, predictably, were not amused. They essentially say that the argument here being that essentially boosting exposure to South Africa's labour problems. Its share price tumbled by 14%. Over in Kenya, 51.9001, the 20-share index close to a 12-month high. Mumia Sugar issued a profit warning. Its shares ended the day 2.17% lower. Ugandan subsidiaries pulled down the profits of the Kenyan retailer Uchumi. We'll have the details. And we'll be looking at Apple's latest products that had a tech world all abuzz yesterday evening. All that and more is coming up on Global Business.
African leaders have been urged to make it easier to move and do business across borders within the African continent.
Africans should be free to move in their continent, to do business, to interact, if we are to grow the levels of investment and trade that will ensure that we are able to create the jobs for our people that we require.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Business Africa. Now, after a 7% decline in full-year pre-tax profits to just over $5 million, the Kenyan retail chain Uchumi is now reviewing its strategy in Uganda. Part of the plan is to shut down operations in areas that have not been delivering acceptable returns. Consequently, one of its outlets in Kampala has now been shut down. CCTV's Michael Beleke has more.
Uchumi is one of the major foreign commercial retailers in Uganda. It is now operating 5 branches after one was closed. Local press reports indicated the Kenyan chain was exiting the country, but the supermarket denies that.
Uchumi has just been cross-listed in the Ugandan Stock Exchange. What we are saying is we are looking at coming up with a strategy to ensure that we retain shops that are profitable. Any unsustainable branch we close. We hand on the one that is Freedom City, but we are not pulling out of this market. If anything, we are looking at how we can increase our market share.
Early this month, the Kenyan supermarket chain reported a 7.6% increase in profit after tax for the full year ended June 30th, 2014, closing the year at $4.3 million, despite a 12% slump in its Uganda operations. The decline is blamed on competition and supply chain challenges in Uganda.
Generally, there is an economic meltdown right now. But we are saying this is a short-term thing that is not going to take long. So Uchumi is a household name, and we are positioning ourselves. We want to position ourselves in a way that when the economy improves, then we are also going to go up there.
The target is the growing middle class, who have mixed reactions about the mushrooming mega stores.
A mega store like this provides convenience for me. I save a lot of time because I find everything I need in one place.
So I feel like it's a more relaxing experience compared to the usual shop thing.
Their prices are also slightly higher, like a few shillings higher than the local shops around.
The retail chain has 36 outlets in Uganda, Kenya and Tanzania. Uchumi says it has identified 3 more locations to open new supermarkets inside Uganda. The battle for control of Uganda's retail market is set to intensify as foreign mega stores and local ones roll out expansion plans. With foreign direct investments increasing, competition is bound to surge, forcing the stores to seek to outdo each other in search of profits to remain in business. Michael Baleke, CCTV, Kampala.
Let's talk about online payment solutions. One particular company in that space, PayPal, says Africa is fertile ground for online transactions against widely held perceptions that the continent had been slow in the uptake of electronic commerce. Now, the company says growth in recently launched markets in Nigeria and in Kenya so far has been quite impressive. And this comes just days after announcing that its accounts had hit 1 million in South Africa just 4 years after launch. PayPal is on a campaign to spread its footprint right across Africa.
We see great potential in Africa, and actually our journey here has been amazing. We launched 4 years ago a partnership with FNB in South Africa, which allowed South Africans to withdraw funds from their PayPal accounts into their South African bank accounts. Today they can withdraw into any bank account in South Africa. So that really gave us the opportunity to start working with merchants and individuals who want to get paid online. So we have, especially in the Kenyan market, today we launched 1 year ago with Equity Bank. We have freelancers, so people who do marketing jobs online. We have artists who create artifacts and arts that they sell on Etsy or on different international platforms, and they get paid by their clients who come from all over the world.
Now, the US tech giant Apple on Tuesday unveiled its first ever iWatch right along its newest smartphones, the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus in San Francisco, California. The iWatch will be introduced to the market in early 2015 for about $350 or so. It'll come in 2 sizes and 3 styles. Now, this wearable electronic device will work, of course, with iPhone handsets, newer models and older ones as well, to collect fitness and health information and provide suggestions to owners on apps available at the store. Here's CCTV's Mark New with a story that makes our What's Hot segment tonight.
Just minutes into the event, Apple hit the crowd with what would turn out to be a show filled with superlatives.
We are launching the biggest advancement in the history of iPhone.
The leaks leading up to the event were correct, as Apple unveiled 2 thinner iPhones that had bigger screens than its previous 4-inch 5S model. The iPhone 6 moves to 4.7 inches and the iPhone 6 Plus to 5.5 inches, offering improvement in numerous areas such as photography, battery life, and broader viewing angles. Some analysts believe this was finally the day CEO Tim Cook put his stamp on Apple, announcing new products and services with flair.
And I'd like to show you just how fast and just how easy it is.
Okay, your total is $23.78.
That's it!
Through Apple Pay, all you have to do is take a photo of your credit card and it will be stored and encrypted on your phone. Apple says it's actually safer than using a real credit card because the store clerk never sees your numbers. And if you lose your phone, you can use the Find My iPhone app to kill it, and you don't have to cancel your credit card. And for the first time ever on stage, Cook felt confident enough to evoke those famous words from the late Apple co-founder, Steve Jobs.
We have one more thing.
After more than a year of rumors and some disappointment from the industry, Cook produced the gadget that is no longer a myth, the Apple Watch.
It is the next chapter in Apple's story.
The Apple Watch has a flexible Retina and scratch-resistant sapphire display. It uses a dial called the Digital Crown to allow users to fluidly zoom in on apps and make precise adjustments.
I think finally this shows that, Apple is ready to move into the wearables market, and it's doing it in a way that I think everybody expected it to, which is with a lot of power and a lot of style.
The Apple Watch has the ability to sense touch and even force. Health is at the forefront, as it can detect pulse rates, track daily activity, and even suggest fitness goals. Mark New, CCTV, Cupertino, California.
Right then, quick run through the commodity prices here for you. Now, to add on to what we spoke about a little earlier in the bulletin with regard to oil prices, Brent crude and US crude futures were all down today in trading to 16 and 17-month lows respectively. OPEC, of course, has trimmed forecasts for global oil demand by about 160,000 barrels per day for this year and the next as well. It's a simple case of oversupply on one hand and lower demand on the other, and that's creating a lot of opportunity for profit somewhere in between. When we come back, we'll be looking at Ndani TV. It's creating quite the buzz among Nigeria's online media consumers. Why is that? We'll tell you why shortly. Welcome back. You're still watching Global Business Africa from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Now, online TV streaming is gaining favor with more and more Nigerians. The country, of course, is home to over 60 million discrete internet users. The revenue potential of that number alone is quite large. Tonight in Grassroots, we focus on Ndani TV. It's a business model built on a growing number of internet connections in Africa's most populous nation.
Ndani TV was launched in the year 2012. It's a web-based television channel sponsored by Nigeria's Guarantee Trust Bank. What started off as a digital marketing project is now a fully fledged media company.
we looked around for premium content in Nigeria and even in Africa, and it was very hard to find, tailored towards the target market, premium, and also done at a certain level of quality. So we decided to build our own team and build our own resources, and basically it has grown from a small project at GTB into this media platform online.
Ndani runs 21 programs, from drama, series, entertainment, business and travel shows. The channel has 33,000 subscribers and well over 1 million viewers, and that's set to grow even further.
We were passionate about telling this contemporary African and lifestyle story. So it wasn't just the traditional, but even who are we right now? Who's the young African, and how do they live? How do they solve the problems that affect them?
According to estimates, Africa will have a staggering 635 million internet users by the end of the year. Millions more live outside the continent. So, if companies like Ndani TV market themselves right, they're set to grow from strength to strength. Peter Wakaba, CCTV.
Now then, the African Fashion Week was just held in New York. Designers from across the continent were present with their latest designs. This, of course, was an opportunity for them to prove that they are ready to take a leading role in an industry that historically has shoved them into the background. Patrice Howard has more from New York.
The colors and cuts featured on the runway at African Fashion Week New York, as diverse as the continent they come from. But they share a common thread. Each piece tells a story about Africa, a story unique to the designers who are creating couture on the continent.
What we're doing is mostly sharing stories and sharing inspiration from the Pan-African community through our fashion. And so, if you look at things that we produce, it has a Western tone to it, but it still has this Pan-African feel or story embedded in the design. And some of these major brands don't do that. They copy and then they paste.
But in fashion, imitation is often a form of flattery. Wiesderm Franklin hopes his collection will catch the eye of industry bigwigs, who can take African fashion mainstream.
This is a great platform for African designers, and I believe it will reach out to probably manufacturers outside Africa to probably come to Africa. If they do come, African fashion will tend to grow, and before you know it, any country in Africa could become also a major fashion city like New York or Paris or London.
With this rare invitation to show their stuff beside the best in the industry, African designers may soon be able to take their looks from the catwalk to real customers.
As they continue to push what they consider African fashion, and they continue to showcase during these large events such as Fashion Week, I believe that will start to make way within the industry. More importantly, enter into stores, because people really want to know, where do I get this? Where do I buy it?
A sign that Fashion Week is as much about connections as it is about clothing. The success of Africa Fashion Week has brought attention to African brands, launched careers, and formed international partnerships. But designers say the chance to show their work at New York City's Fashion Week could be a sign that Africa is emerging as an international fashion hub. Patrice Howard, CCTV, New York.
As far as currencies are concerned, 3 key data points you need to know about. The Naira hit a 2-month low of about 162.87. In Egypt, coin inflation went up. Pretty much the same thing happened in Ghana, up to 15.9% in August from 15.3% in July. And here's what you can expect on the program later on tomorrow. The World Economic Forum for New Champions continues in Tianjin in China. We'll have the developments from that end of the continent. We will also certainly be looking at other entrepreneurs at this year's Africa Fashion Week in New York. And that's it for this edition of Global Business. So send your feedback on the program to Global Business Africa at cctv.com, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you are online. So are we. Thank you so much for watching. Let's do this again in 23 hours. I'm Ramanya.